This episode is presented by Fleet Feet.
Where we're going, I would never, never live this far out. I've never been there, but it just does not seem like a place that I would feel comfortable, so I'm excited to check it out. My name is Allison Mariella Desir, and this is Out and Back, a podcast exploring how Black, Indigenous, and other people of color are reclaiming space in the outdoors. Each episode, you'll hear their stories, and we'll get outside with them in their element. We're ending the season in Leavenworth, Washington, with Chelsea Murphy, aka She Colors Nature, and her 2 daughters. Chelsea will tell you all about her journey to reclaim the outdoors for herself, her daughters, and for BIPOC women. But first, here's a little of the history that continues to make Black women feel unwelcome and unsafe outdoors. First, there's the traumatic association between forests, trees, and decades of terror and lynching for Black Americans. Second, until the mid-20th century, Jim Crow segregation ruled the outdoors. Restrooms, campsites, dining areas all frequently had white-only signs. And third, Black people could experience violence and intimidation even where there wasn't legal exclusion. That is why, from 1936 through 1966, a former U.S. Postal Service employee from Harlem named Victor Hugo Green published the Negro Motorist Green Book, which provided detailed information on places Black travelers would be welcomed. Finally, to this day, the outdoor industry is largely represented as white, male, and straight, which is why we need people like Chelsea Murphy. If you want to see Chelsea, her daughters, and I having our talk and adventure, check out our video series. There's a link to it in the show notes, or you can find it at crosscut.com/video. Cool. So we are here in Leavenworth. What brings a Black person to this town?
We moved here after my daughter was born. My husband grew up in Leavenworth, and we met over in Tacoma where I grew up. And when he told me that he grew up in Leavenworth, I had no idea what that was. And so when I came here for the first time to visit with him just to meet his parents, it was pretty shocking. I had never been in such a place that was so submerged by greenery, mountains and forests and green spaces. And a couple years later, we had our daughter, Sienna, and it was presented to us, obviously, to move back here and be closer to his family. And I said yes. Leavenworth has been a really love-hate relationship for me.
Right.
So it's been a journey. I've been here 9 years now. At first, it was very much like this big journey of just like finding myself and finding my place, and a lot of that really brought me to the outdoors, because that's what Leavenworth is. It's this place where the Columbia River and the Icicle River all flow together. It's a place where you see 360-degree mountains everywhere. You can walk out your front door and be literally in the middle of the forest in like 10 minutes. It's got all 4 seasons. But it also has this really quirky Bavarian theme in the downtown area that really deters most people. Well, I should say most Black people.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You said, that this was the most green space you've been in, but also a very white space, right? So I'm curious about that, what it's like being one of the only in this space.
I grew up in a lot of really largely white spaces, and so navigating that has never really been something that I stopped to like really think about. And so Leavenworth, in a sense, felt like home. I started hiking and figured, like if I'm going to live here and if that's what people do here, then maybe I should like see what all the hype is about.
Did you think of yourself as an outdoors person?
I never thought of myself as an outdoorsy person. That was never even a part of my vocabulary until like recent years. My mom would say that I was a modern day hippie. So like I just loved being barefoot outside. And I never had any fancy gear or fancy shoes or anything like that, but I always had this inherent love for nature and the natural world. And also just this idea of reciprocity, and that like we are all a part of nature somehow, but I could never actually like name that, when I was a kid or a young adult. I never named that.
That's so interesting, because despite being like very outdoorsy, it was not an identity that you tapped into. And I'm wondering, because I see the outdoors really being very like commodified as this one thing, as epic adventure, as like white dudes scaling mountains. Like, was that sort of what outdoors was to you? Yeah,
I definitely recognize like outdoors and the outdoorsy people as like white families, right? That visited campsites and went fishing with their families all the time. Like it was just like a consistent way of life, right? And I think that a lot of the times when I did go and do those things, I did those things with my white families, my friends. And so that's where I always let my brain drift to.
It like wasn't yours.
Yeah, no, it wasn't mine. And it wasn't things that I was doing with my family very often. It didn't happen consistently. But yeah, I think living in Leavenworth definitely has transformed myself and my just ways of thinking and existing in those spaces.
What set it off, right? Like you went on a hike. Was it like one particular moment that you were like, oh, wait a second?
I want to say that it was a little bit of both. Like there definitely was one particular hike that I remember going on with a girlfriend of mine. It was hot. I saw rattlesnakes. Like there was so much of it that was just like, this is not me. Like this is not what my people do. Like I don't hang around a lot of black people, but I know they're not doing this. Like this is not what we do. But it was.
We know better.
Yeah, exactly. But there was something about that hike and all of the hikes that followed that were just like, I mean, you've even said it before, like when you see me outside, I'm just like this big kid, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so much childlike joy that comes up for me that I can't deny. So yeah, it was just like another stepping stone saying like, okay, this is your path, here's a hike that you can try that's 5 minutes from your house. You can do it, and it's only going to get easier as you go about your postpartum journey. And so this can be like something for me that is just much more of this like explorative journey, where it's just like there's really no wrong way to do this. Like there can't be, especially when you dumb it down to just like walking in nature, right? Like it doesn't have to be any more than that. I can go as far or not as I want, I can go with who I want. I can have as
feeling in control,
which
after being pregnant, there's nothing more than
mine.
You want.
Where your body is not yours, like your emotions are not yours, your hormones are not yours, like all of your energy that you worked so hard to balance out and maintain, those are not yours anymore, and so just like Leavenworth was in my face. 9 years later, I can honestly say like there's no place else that I would rather be. Like it is, my anxiety comes back. Like all these like anxiety and like weird feelings when I'm in city settings where I'm like so far removed from the forest and green spaces, where I'm just like in this like concrete, there's too much concrete, right? Too many fences, and for some reason that brings up some anxiousness in myself now, where I never had that. Like growing up in Tacoma, those things were never true about me before.
You said something and we both laughed, and it's because it's something that black people say and we know what we're referencing, but it's like this idea that black people don't go to the outdoors, black people don't do this. I'm curious how that has informed your relationship with the outdoors, all of these like things we tell ourselves.
After having kids, that is the last thing I wanted for them, to grow up in a place that I put them in, right, in Leavenworth. And then I'm saying and telling them, well, black people don't hike, or black people don't swim, or black people don't fish, or Black people don't snowboard. You know, the list goes on and on and on. It just never felt appropriate, like perpetuating those stereotypes that were placed on me, that I never really understood fully, right? But you know, now recognized to be something that it's very historical. You know, it goes way back. Yeah, the generational trauma, and even like few years of living here and bringing my parents here and bringing my mom on hikes and like camp trips and different things, and then allowing that to kind of like the stories that she tells when she's outdoors with us of like her childhood and the things that she remembers, like those wouldn't have come out anywhere else, right? Like around a dinner table or anything like that. I've learned so much about her from just like going outside and doing things with her. And my dad as well. Like we went on a trip up in the mountains in the car, and I think he was really anxious going up, but we went to the top, and at the very top we all got out and just like walked around. It was me and my dad and my girls, and we found this log to like sit down and overlook into the mountains, and all of a sudden he just starts opening up to me about like his childhood in Mississippi and how like he actually did grow up in a really country setting where he was like in the mountains a lot and like backcountry woods and like farming with his grandpa and like just all of these things where I had never heard. I'm like, who is this guy? You know? And then on our way down, he's like, I really appreciate you bringing me here. Like I didn't realize how much I hadn't told you yet about how similar of a lifestyle you're giving your kids, you know, and then just admittedly saying like there's a lot of trauma for him that he just doesn't like to bring up, but it felt really natural for him to be in the backcountry.
I was gonna say, what do you think it is about the nature, about the outdoors that like really is evocative, you know? We
are nature, and I think that nature wants us to be there just as much as we want to be with nature. Ultimately, like there's something so juvenile, right, that we all go back to, and we all can just like remember certain things, whether that's a memory or a smell or an opportunity. There's just something that really just lets all the walls fall down. There is just no filter for people in nature. Like there are just so many things that come up for us. I know I've had like big cries on my like trail runs that I go on where it's just like, I don't think I was feeling this 5 minutes ago, you know?
There's so much more to the story, so keep listening.
This episode is presented by Fleet Feet. Fleet Feet believes that running changes everything. We sell the shoes, apparel, and gear you need to get started. And we host fun runs, training groups, and events. Whether you're training for your first mile or your 50th marathon, we're here to run with you. Learn more at fleetfeet.com.
My kids are mixed race, which brings a whole nother aspect to parenting and just raising them that I really probably don't even fully understand quite yet. Just their different identities and the ways that they will have to navigate between identities, being both Black and white. But again, just really working from day one to just slash all the biases and stereotypes that society puts on people, and just like understanding that it's okay to just be.
Tell me about your kids.
Yeah.
I love that so much of the outdoors for you is tied to becoming a mother and wanting something better, something more joyful for your kids.
Yeah. So my oldest daughter, Sienna, she's 9 now. And then, 4 years later, having my second daughter, Etta, and actually having a miscarriage in between the two of them. And just like going through all of that and like the journey of the really high highs and the really low lows, and just allowing myself to connect with nature every time that I felt any of those high highs or low lows. But yeah, they are the reason why I have made my journey public and have vocalized the things that I want to see change in the outdoor community and the outdoor industry, because it's really important to me, you know, not only that we have this beautiful life in the mountains and can get outside whenever we want to and be welcomed in those spaces, but like also extending that invitation to other Black people, Black moms, Black children who might not see themselves in those spaces. And because we've grown up in a space where like mountains and forests and valleys and lakes and all that have been really accessible,
this is just what they know.
This is all they know. Like when even my daughter's experienced it and expressed it before to me too. Like she gets that same like anxiety feeling when we're in the city.
I heard your parenting style is very unique. Tell me about how
I don't have a lot of mom friends. I really don't. I just feel like, I don't know. I think that there's just this level of like people who like to be outdoors, and then it's like people who just like, I would rather be outdoors than indoors. And I think sometimes that is the line where maybe I've crossed it. I'm on the other side of things. Like our kids have both been hiking since they were 4 months old. You know, Etta a little sooner because I was a little more, I think, I don't even know the word. My husband would probably say risky with her, but I knew my way around. I knew which hikes to go on, which ones were kid friendly, which ones had phone service, like all of those things. And so we went hiking. I mean, as soon as my body was like, let's go do something, she was on my back and we were getting outside. But they've both like been floating down the Icicle River when they were 6 months old. We just like strapped them in a life jacket and we're just like, come on, let's go do this thing. And they both were on snowboards at like a year and a half. You know, as soon as they could walk, we're like, if you can walk, you can snowboard for sure. For sure. At least we can try. We'll put on a helmet and we'll see what happens. Right. My motto is like 30 minutes outside every day. Depending on what season it is, that determines like what we're doing outside. And like really just circling back to the way that I grew up is like understanding that like it's okay to just be outside, right? There is no one holding this like standard of outdoorsy over your head. I just want them to recognize nature as like their second home. So much of my journey that's really intertwined in theirs, and it's a really beautiful thing, like understanding that myself, my husband, my daughters, like are all just happier outside. So it's like, why not go if we have access, right? And that's just like what I want for more Black people. And
I know that a big part of your work is about normalizing Black people, Black women in the outdoors. Can you tell me more about that? You know, She Colors Nature. Like, where did this go, or when and how did this go from like your own personal experience to work and something bigger?
It wasn't until 2019, so at that point I had both Sienna and Etta was almost 2. We were all on a family trip to Idaho, and I was just like in this space where I was just like, do I want to start talking about the things that we talk about, you know, behind closed doors in our families, like how there's just a huge lack of diversity in the outdoors. There's a huge lack of diversity and accountability in the outdoor industry. Like we go into like certain outdoor stores and we just never see people who look like our family. And just, recognizing that like kind of the idea, like if you want to read a certain book, but you're not seeing that book written, like you have to get up and get out and write it yourself. And so, we were just kind of laughing, like, oh, maybe we'll start a blog. Like, what would we blog about? You know, like, what would it look like? And so, it just so happened that on that trip I had time, and I was like, I'm just gonna start talking about like how I grew up with this narrative that like Black people don't hike, but like here I am, like clearly, you know, hiking and doing all of these things, and I know that I can't be the only one, right? That's just like really a small chance to me. I just maybe have not found those people yet, found that network. And so I chose Instagram, and I just started like posting about like the things that my family and I like to do and how I often feel like I'm the only one. And just this stereotype of just like, you know, Black people don't, and like, you know, these lists of like what Black people don't do. And then all of a sudden, like I started getting like this, like it was like a Me Too movement, right? Like I also am the only Black girl in my mountain town, but I do love to snowboard and I enjoy hiking and I fish all the time, and like all of these like really amazing and really rad men and women that were like, you're not alone. Like, we are out here. We just, maybe don't have public Instagrams or like ways to communicate with each other, right? There weren't a lot of organizations back in 2019 that were getting the publicity that they needed to be able to get funding and more people involved, and just like this huge networking situation that happened. And so I had this really like quaint community and this network of other Black moms, women of color who are also just engaging with the outdoors and getting their children out and getting them involved as well.
She Colors Nature, how did you come up with that?
Kind of a play on words where, thinking of like colored folk, right? That's like something that we don't say anymore. We don't use that anymore, but almost just like taking that back and like giving life and breathing power into that. So that's where I was like, She Colors Nature. That's like a play on both that word and also, when I go outdoors, I literally feel like I am putting color into nature and the outdoors where there isn't any. Like, there's so much of Instagram and social media world that is completely toxic in a space that there was a reason why I wasn't in that space for so long, because like that's not where I thrive. But recognizing that like in the world that we live in right now, like Instagram is a huge tool, right? It's a tool for reaching people. Like, we would have never connected. I would have just been living in this mountain town doing our normal things and not reaching anyone. I made this Instagram thinking like, oh my gosh, like white people really just think that like Black people don't like to get outdoors, and then confirmed in 2020 it's like, oh my God, you actually thought that we didn't like to be outside. Like, that was a huge, like, not only an awakening for the industry but also for me, because I was able to just kind of like vent.
What I think is so powerful is that it went from this very personal experience you had to then wanting to create community with other people like you, to then shifting the industry and demanding equity, right? So it's like this very organic but really powerful from just the personal to political, right?
And I think that comes from being one of the only, like a handful of people. Not to say that there weren't others doing the work like that already, and there were so many organizations that were trying to get their foot in the doors, saying all of these things and saying it very loudly, but until 2020 no one was being heard, right? No one was being listened to. There were no invitations to the table. There was a huge gatekeeping situation that was going on between like Black and brown communities and the white people who take up the table and the seats behind all of the outdoor communities and industries that we see today. I think the best thing that has happened in the last couple of years is seeing a lot of Black and brown led organizations come to the forefront, making it even more equitable for Black and brown people to feel welcome in spaces that exist. And lots of organizations. I mean, I could name so many, but I won't do that to you guys.
Tell me about Expedition Reclamation. Why that?
Oh man, and it's crazy. Like, when I'm laying this all out like this for you, because it really all happened at the same time. So like end of 2019 was when Erin Joy, so that's a filmmaker that lives here in Leavenworth. She grew up here in Leavenworth, and she is another white woman who just like, before the awakening was woke, right? Like, she came to me and was just like, I recognize that I want to tell this story about, the need for more Black and Indigenous voices in the outdoor industry, but I recognize that maybe I shouldn't be the one to tell that story. And so she brought me along on the journey, and I put out a call for characters on my Instagram, which it's cool thinking now, like, if I hadn't have built that community first, Expedition Reclamation would not have had the reach that it had when we said, hey, calling all Black, Indigenous, women of color who love to get outside. It wasn't like, we need you to be like summiting mountains. We need you to be like this epic skier. We need you to be, this unreachable Black person in the outdoors. It was like, if you get outside, like,
I love
hit
that.
us up, right? Shoot us an email. And we got this flood of women back that were just like, hi, I think I get outside. Like I like to go, in nature sometimes, and I like to write poetry in nature, and I like to use my indigenous knowledge to grow food in nature. And it was just kind of this like come one, come all, really beautiful moment. Because of COVID, we had to extend the invitation then only to people within Washington State. But that worked out really amazingly because, as progressive as Washington claims to be, like there is still so much work that can be done within the white outdoor communities here. But yeah, we just started dreaming up like what would it take to create a brave space for these women, right? Like it's one thing to have Black and brown people in front of the camera, but we need them behind the camera. And so we brought in another Indian American woman who was also a filmmaker at the time she was in Utah. And she lives in LA now. Her name's Sanjana. And so it was me and Aaron and Sanjana, and it was at the time 55 women who answered that call to characters. And then we got it down to about 12, including myself. And it really just became very clear that like, it wasn't just a film that needed, to come to the table or stories that needed to be told, but it was more of like these women needed community too, right? And so a lot of expedition reclamation, well, I'll say expedition reclamation has kind of been like the byproduct of this really awesome, really brave community that we've been building, and just like having
so
that.
the film has been like a nice byproduct.
Yeah, because it did come way later, right? And so yeah, I have been a co-producer and co-director on that project over the last couple of years, while also having my hand in She Colors Nature, and just like Expedition Reclamation is a film that weaves the stories of 12 different Black, Indigenous, and women of color. And so our stories are about, liberation and reclamation and finding belonging in the outdoors, and just understanding that like there is no one way of getting outside. And then that this, word outdoorsy is really restricting and binding us to a certain way of viewing like who gets outside. And how they get outside, right? And how much money they make. It's not your average outdoorsy film, right? There's no like one main character doing this like really rad, stoke-worthy thing. It's like all of these women hyping up each other, and like a chorus of just like, we are here and we've been here, our ancestors have been here, and it is like truly inherent in all of us to just be outside in whatever way possible.
I guess that's what the reclamation, right? To reclaim something means that it's been ours, like we've been there. What does that title mean, Expedition Reclamation? And how do you see yourself reclaiming space?
Yeah. So Expedition Reclamation is both a tongue twister and such a beautiful riddle, because we took the word expedition, right? It's another one of those play on words. Like when you think of expeditions at their core, you usually like tie them to this like really colonial, like settler way of like taking and conquering, and we wanted to gentle that a little bit and really like take back that usage in a way that is a lot more focused around just this reciprocal way of reclaiming the outdoors, this journey that we have all been on over the last, however many years of just understanding our place in the outdoors.
What does it mean for you to reclaim space in the outdoors?
So for me, I think that reclaiming space in the outdoors has a lot to do with just this idea that you belong somewhere. It's a feeling, whether that be physical or spiritual or emotional. It's just understanding that at one time or another, like people that looked like you weren't capable of just existing in these spaces, and recognizing, how far we've come and how much farther we can go. And just really feeling like you are a part of that space.
I love reclaiming is a feeling.
Yeah, it is a big feeling, right? A big feeling of just like really liberating, to the point where it's just like, even if someone did try and tell me like, you don't belong here, like at this point in my journey, I would have a lot of words for that person.
Right. That's what I think is most beautiful when I see you with your girls, that they will grow up never having to doubt that they belong, never having to feel out of place.
Yeah. You know, that is my hopes for them, is that they're very confused when they look back at my Instagram posts, and that they do think of them as like dated information, right? That they and their friends will never have to worry about like not belonging in a space or going on a journey of reclamation in the outdoors. That is just something that is, and that our society and our outdoor industries and communities continue to build on the things that, you know, a lot of Black and brown and Indigenous people have started, you know, and just continue to keep doing better and keep understanding the ways that we can continue building on the things that have already been, and make it so that there shouldn't need to be a she colors nature anymore, right? That I'm out of a job at some point. That would be the hopes, for sure.
After the interview, I took a hike with Chelsea and her daughters, and we talked some more.
Wait, where are we going?
Ski Hill. You want to show them around Ski Hill?
Well, I actually know the way. Ski Hill's a maze.
A little bit. Here we are.
Okay, but can I lead the way?
You want to lead the way?
I'm going!
What is it like to share the outdoors with your children?
Being with my kids outdoors is just a really big treat. You know, there's just something so special about being outside with them and getting to see them, you know, be their fullest person, right? Their fullest little girl, and really just allowing them to create and be confident and be really intentional about, you know, the ways that they're moving their bodies. And it's just like a really free and liberating feeling as a mother to be able to see my little girls like and experience that through nature and the outdoors.
I've never actually seen children move through nature the way your girls do, like just completely in their own element. And I think the other piece that's really unique is you are a woman, you're a woman of color alone with her children. I mean, how did you find comfort in that?
There was no question that if I wanted to do this thing, you know, I would have to do it by myself or with them, you know. I couldn't wait for anyone, and oftentimes that's what it's like too, like when you're getting into hiking,
right?
You can't wait for your friend to want to do it. You can't wait for your partner to want to do it. Oftentimes you just have to go out and you have to do it. And so, I think that I was warned about a lot of things too, you know, with my husband growing up here. Like, he did let me know about the bears and the cougars and the things that I might run into. Some of the things I experienced on my own, a lot of it thankfully was without them. Running into bears and seeing rattlesnakes on the trail, like those things have happened to me.
Do you fear, the one thing that you find out here that you haven't mentioned is other people? Do you fear other people on the trail?
Yeah, you know, I have had to have that be something that I sit aside. I really try and just make sure that like my faith is what stands out over my anxieties over dangerous things. You know, there's enough barriers and you know, things stacked up against Black women getting outdoors, especially with kids and young girls. And so I try and just make sure that that's not what's on the forefront of my mind, and that I'm still getting outside and being mindful, but not letting that overtake me and saying, like, you shouldn't come to these spaces because of X, Y, and Z, but just saying, okay, we're gonna go to these spaces, but what might that look like for me?
How do you fit in daily trips outdoors? Like, how do you make time for you getting outdoors, for your girls getting outdoors with all of the responsibilities that you have?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a dance most days. I think that, you know, like some people make going to the coffee shop every day a priority. Going hiking and, you know, taking that time outside is my priority, right? And so whether that is with my kids or with my husband or by myself, like at this point in our lives, it is a huge priority. Like sometimes like hiking for us is literally just like coming out here and sitting on a log and like calling it a day, you know, and having our snacks or our breakfast out in nature, and like that is it, right? And oh, we hiked.
We never have breakfast outside.
Well, I do. Very, very, so often.
What's a favorite moment that you've had with your girls in the outdoors?
Gosh, I think that camping would probably be some of my favorite moments. Like, I think camping is something that gets us out of our normal just long enough to where we're all, you know, in our most natural state of being, right? Where we've been outdoors for a night or two and, you know, we haven't heard any cars in a while and, you know, we just kind of lose sight of all the things that we've left behind and things are just so much more fun when you're camping, right? Mom says yes to so many things that I probably wouldn't if we were at home. And so everybody's happy when we're out camping.
What do you believe is the power of representation?
It has the power to allow you to see yourself in a place where maybe you never dreamed of. And I just feel like it opens so many doors.
Did you ever imagine that this would be the life that you lead?
If you would have told 20-year-old Chelsea that she would be, 1, living in a mountain town, 2, living in a mountain town and sharing her like hiking experience publicly, she probably would have spit laughed on you and just walked away. It's in turn been incredible and had so many benefits for my daughters and opportunities for them and just like networking and creating this community for both them and myself. And then, you know, in the end, it's just like created this huge ripple effect.
What would you say are the key obstacles that prevent Black people from getting outdoors?
Definitely gear, your access, and your proximity to nature. And the third one I think would just be comfort. So feeling comfortable in those spaces and just like feeling like you can show up as your like most authentic self in some place that feels very natural to you. And I think for a lot of Black and Indigenous people, since we've been told for so long that like we don't do these things or we don't do these things in that way, that we don't often feel comfortable showing up in the outdoors or on a hike. Even if we've been invited, it takes a little bit more than just an invitation to get someone to feel comfortable in a space.
Your girls are joy personified.
Yes,
Thank you for sharing that
they
with me.
love being outdoors. We always say that there's not one kind of Black girl, right? Black is not a monolith, and you know, Black people are so expansive, and we can be mixed girls, we can be Black girls, we can be lovers of nature, because it just really helps us be better stewards of the land and the places that we go to. And so hopefully, you know, my kids will have awesome places to hang out in nature, and their kids will have awesome places to hang out in nature.
We hope forever and ever.
Yeah, forever and ever. Yeah, definitely. So thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Definitely. You girls want to say thanks to Miss Allison?
Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to continue adventuring with me and dive deeper into this story, check out the show notes. There, you'll find links to the video series and an article I wrote about the themes of this episode. This podcast is hosted and reported by Allison Mariella Desir. That's me. My producer is Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers. The executive producer is Mark Baumgarten. Audio production from Bryce Y. Adolfson and Sarah E. Hall. And audio support from Rusty Bogal and Seth Halloran. You can subscribe to Out and Back wherever you listen. And if you like the show, please review us. It helps create excitement around a new show. And if you'd like to support the work we do at Crosscut, go to crosscut.com/membership. In addition to supporting our journalism, members receive complete access to on-demand programming from KCTS 9, Seattle's PBS station. For the latest political, environmental, and culture news from the Pacific Northwest, visit crosscut.com. Out and Back is a product of Cascade Public Media. And that's a wrap on Season 1. Thanks so much for going on this adventure with me.